As you say, there's this whole narrative that, if Trump gets in, this election might be America's last.
Now, when a crowd stormed the US Capitol on January the 6th, 2021, it looked like an attempt by a mob of crazed Trump supporters to overturn the election. But their failure wasn't the wild finale of a chaotic Trump presidency. It was, in fact, only the beginning. The Coming Storm, the debut book from award-winning journalist Gabriel Gatehouse, pulls at the long roots of America's conspiracy-laden political culture to unravel a disturbing thread that runs from long-forgotten coup plots against FDR via the death of a Clinton aide in the 1990s, right through to Pizzagate and Hunter Biden's laptop via white supremacists, tech bros, and men's rights activists. And I am delighted that Gabriel joins us tonight. Gabriel, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jane. How are you?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
Very good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thanks for being here. So people will probably have heard your fantastic podcast, The Coming Storm, which is very highly rated. And you've now put it all into a book. Now, you said that QAnon didn't come out of nowhere in Trump's presidency. And in fact, in the book, you trace this through line from the Clinton era to QAnon. Can you briefly explain that through line and how all these points are connected?
Well, so when I started looking into QAnon, I was basically so struck by the centrality of the figure of Hillary Clinton. She was supposed to be the leader of this cabal of satanic pedophiles that was secretly ruling America, and trying to steal the 2020 election. That was the kind of crazed narrative that helped drive the mob into the Capitol. So I started looking at the Clintons. I thought it makes sense to go back to the 90s. And if you go back to the 90s, you find that right at the dawn of the internet era, if you like, the Cold War has come to an end. It's the triumph of liberalism. All the kind of questions about history seem to have been decided. Famously, Francis Fukuyama calls it the end of history. But in fact, what you see is that beneath the surface, all these conspiracy theories are bubbling away, and they're being driven first by talk radio and then by the nascent internet. And we focused in on one story, which was about this lawyer, Vince Foster. He was a boyhood friend of Bill Clinton's. He'd worked with Hillary back in Arkansas. And when the Clintons moved up to Washington in 1993, Vince Foster came with them, and he commits suicide in the summer of 93, the first year of Bill Clinton's term. And it's investigated, it's ruled a suicide by 4 or 5 different investigations. But beneath the surface, these conspiracy theories start germinating. And this is the beginning of something called the Clinton body count, which, if you spend enough time on the sort of more paranoid end of the American political spectrum, as I have done over the past few years, you'll hear about that quite a lot. It's this idea that the Clintons, in their quest for power, have basically trampled over the bodies of up to 100 or more different people. And Vince Foster, he's not chronologically the first body on that list, but he's sort of the most important. He's sort of the ground zero of that crazy conspiracy theory.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Do you think that, I mean, much as this story has sort of been built up mythologically from that era, do you think there's something about America that has made it germinate in this way? Or do you think it could have happened anywhere? It feels as if America is more susceptible to conspiracy theories than other places. Do you think that's fair?
I mean, I think in a sense it's fair. I don't want to overplay it, but there is, famously what had been described as the paranoid style in American politics for decades. This was described in the 1960s. It's McCarthyism, it's Reds under the beds. And in fact, we go into that quite a bit. I mean, you mentioned in your introduction this coup attempt against Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I had no idea this had even happened. I think most Americans don't know this happened, but it's true. And it was all to do with the Federal Reserve. So you might think that the Federal Reserve is a dull topic, America's central bank. It kind of regulates the banking industry. But as soon as it came into being, pretty much 1913, and then when FDR came in 20 years later and suspended the gold standard, conspiracy theories started attracting it. And there were a bunch of wealthy industrialists in 1933, 34 who were so upset about FDR taking America off the gold standard and using the Federal Reserve to print money and spend his way out of the Great Depression at the time. They thought he was a sort of crypto communist, and they tried to stage a fascist coup. Now, this is all documented. There's a congressional report about this. They tried to recruit an ex-Marine by the name of Smedley Butler, sort of rabble rouser who had a big following amongst unemployed World War I veterans. They tried to get this guy to march an army of 500,000 unemployed soldiers onto the White House lawn. And depose FDR and reimpose the gold standard. So this paranoia, this deep-seated fear of communism, which you hear again now, Trump constantly describing Kamala Harris as a Marxist, etc. This has been there for a very long time, and it's very much coming to the fore now as America approaches another election.
Well, speaking of that election, Gabriel, so there's certain camps that believe that a second Trump presidency would be the end of democracy. There are other camps that say that actually the biggest risk to democracy is if he loses. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think it's a very interesting question. I mean, as you say, there's this whole narrative that, if Trump gets in, this election might be America's last. I can tell you from having spent a lot of time kind of in MAGA world, is that these people, most of them genuinely, there are some kind of troublemakers and cynical people, but most of these people genuinely believe that America's democracy has already been subverted, right? Let's not forget that millions of Americans believe that the 2020 election was stolen. So, you can go through some scenarios. If Trump loses, do we think he's likely to graciously accept the result? Fair win. Well done, Kamala Harris. I wish you well in your presidency. I'm now going to retire and play golf at Bedminster. I hope that happens if that's
unlikely,
the result,
isn't it? Slightly
not
unlikely.
Really, slightly unlikely. So then you'll have this whole set of people, millions of Americans, who will think that their election has been stolen again, twice in a row. And I don't want to be in the business of predicting trouble, but when people don't feel like they can replace their leaders at the ballot, looking for different avenues. And of course, these are the people who generally also own the guns. So,
yeah.
It's a dangerous moment.
It is a dangerous moment. Gabriel, I would love to talk to you at great length about this because it is a wonderful book.